Are you ready for this week? Why do I say that? Well, let me tell you. We have a lot of celestial events that are coming upon us. So I wanted to briefly talk about that, and then I'm going to go in and spend the rest of the time this morning talking about the teaching and discipleship. I wasn't going to say anything because there's so much on the internet these days about the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And then I thought, oh gosh, if I don't, then I'm not doing my job. So let me share what I know and a little bit of history. That it was back in 1226 that we had what was called the Great Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, 1226. This was the launching of the Renaissance period. Right before 1226, right before this conjunction of Jupiter-Saturn, St. Francis died. That seems to be part of the history and significant to the history of the world, actually, his passing. And then the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, again, this is 1226. What's significant about this conjunction, it is thought and believed that conjunction of Jupiter-Saturn is what led the Magi to find Jesus. So this is a real significant conjunction. But it is called the Great Conjunction, or maybe you could even say the Grand Conjunction. It doesn't happen very often. But this coming week, it's going to happen again. The Great Conjunction of Jupiter-Saturn. It's going to actually start the build-up toward the actual exact conjunction. Starts with Saturn moving into the sign of Aquarius on the 16th, and then Jupiter moves into Aquarius on the 19th, and then the actual conjunction will take place on the 21st, which is the winter solstice in Capricorn. And tomorrow we have the solar eclipse, which is taking place with the Sagittarius and Gemini balance. So what's interesting with this, to me, with this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is that the next time it's actually going to happen will be in 2219. And so between now and then, there will be actual conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn, but not the Great Conjunction. So this conjunction will continue to take place in air signs being Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. And then in 2219 is when it will move into the water signs, starting with Scorpio. So what does this all mean? Well, for the first, immediate, this is going to be a week of very intense energies. How are we going to utilize these energies? Is it the launching of a new renaissance? Well, I was thinking with the Electoral College tomorrow, voting to make it finally official, that Joe Biden is going to be the president and Kamala Harris his vice president. It'll be interesting to see what transpires in the news this coming week, and how do people behave themselves. For disciples, we need to really keep our balance. Disciples are extremely sensitive people. How are we going to use this sensitivity? Are we going to have a meltdown? Are we going to react? Or are we going to respond? The thing to do for disciples is to be creative. Bring balance, bring equilibrium into your thoughts, into your conversations. Maybe you'll want to write something about this week and what its significance can be to all of humanity. Maybe you'll want to write a poem about what it is that we're moving into astronomically this week and how it will can affect humanity. Create music. Enjoy the sun. Breathe. Relax. Be positive. Be excited. Realize that we're, born at a time that we are actually going to experience this great conjunction. And then let's be aware of the next 100 years of not just now, not just the present, but what seeds are being planted now, especially by disciples, that will be nurtured and blossom in the future. So this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about discipleship today, because this time is so significant to us. So the talk is titled The Teaching and Discipleship. The teaching for us is Agni Yoga, but the teaching is actually called from what we call the ageless wisdom, which is a collection of experiences of great ones over the history of mankind as messengers that came to this planet and historically brought increasing light, increasing love, increasing power, into the minds of men. And then from the light and love and power that they brought to humanity, religions were established. And for disciples, it's not religion, it's truth. They brought truth to the planet, and it's this truth that formed the ageless wisdom teaching. Teachers like Buddha, Christ, and Moses, and the great ones that we know, brought the truth to the consciousness of humanity. Some of us follow what we call the hierarchical teaching, which is part of the ageless wisdom. The hierarchical teaching, what is included in the hierarchical teaching, is the teaching of Agni Yoga. It is the disciple that carries this truth, this light of the great ones, brings it into a form, brings it into an objectification that can be practiced according to the times, according to the need of society. So we can say a disciple is a light bearer, the bearer of truth, and they carry these teachings in their heart. Let me define a disciple. A disciple can be a man or a woman, found living in places all over the world. We are still living in a very masculine, male-oriented society today, but it is slowly changing from masculine to feminine, and then back into a balance of masculine and feminine as it was in the very beginning. But just to know that a disciple is not just a man. A disciple is a man or a woman found living in places all over the world. This may come as a surprise to you, but it should not, that a disciple can be of any age. A disciple is born a disciple. So you can have a baby that's 3 minutes old that is a disciple. You can have a great-great-great-grandparent that is a disciple, because a disciple is born a disciple. A disciple can be an individual, but also a group disciple. Isn't that interesting? A group disciple is made of individual disciples. A disciple is one who never stands idle. In fact, many people that I talk to in the world of discipleship believe that they are more active in the subtle world than they are in the physical world. And this is why a great-great-great-grandmother or a great-great-great-grandfather can still be an active disciple, because they are active in the subjective and higher worlds. So a disciple never stops functioning or increasing the light or bringing the truth to humanity. So to be a disciple is not to be age-related. This is the point I'm trying to make. A disciple explores the depths or collective experiences of the great ones through their study, through their service and application. As their explorations, their studies, their service takes place, what is happening, it's almost magical. It releases more light from the chalice. It is in the chalice they find the truth. The chalice stores the truth of the great ones throughout the history of humanity. And a disciple, an aspirant, a disciple, an initiate carries this chalice. And these chalices all have connecting threads to one another. It's very interesting. And this is why and how a disciple carries the teachings of truth with them from the time they were born on into their subjective lives. They bring revelations that are given to them or poured forth to them through the chalice. They bring these revelations into formation, into manifestation at the right time. And so it is the discipleship. It is all, I'm trying grammatically, I'm trying to think. They are the disciples of the world. Sorry about trying to lose my solemnity here. It will be the disciples of the world that will really launch and anchor the energy of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, the winter solstice, this solar eclipse, all taking place in the next few days, bringing it into, little by little by little, revelationary bits and pieces coming from this chalice will begin this week. So this is why I was saying earlier, write poetry, do something creative, because now is the time you want to magnetically be open, responsive to this outflow of energy pouring forth from the chalices that all disciples carry in their hearts. So a disciple is a light bearer. From the chalice of the disciple, the teaching penetrates into every cell of their being, into all levels of their being, introducing them into worlds beyond the physical. It is the chalice of the teaching which puts us in contact with the collective experiences. Think of this. These experiences that you're having and that you have become so used to experience experiencing that it's almost commonplace with you, but it's not commonplace with humanity. It is the chalice of the teaching that puts you in contact with the collective experiences of the great ones. This is why you don't need a religion. You are in contact with the messengers that brought the truth to the planet that became ultimately a religion. So we're not religionists. See, we are advocates of the truth, the wisdom of these great ones. It is the radiation of the teaching which, like a magnet, pulls us to a location where we can deliver the teaching into the community and thus into a vital living form. So wherever you are, bring the truth to the community. Bring the teaching into the community. As disciples bring the teaching into manifestation, century after century, each heart that is drawn to the light, the love, and the beauty of the teaching becomes magnetized and vitalized with truth. Our life, our heart nature, is energized by the vitality, the beauty and wisdom of the teaching. It is for this reason Agni Yoga is called the teaching of living ethics. It is alive. It is not stored in the stacks of some ancient manuscripts like some antique artifacts in some museum. However, there is a place on earth called Shambhala, where the many manuscripts and prophecies of the community of the hierarchy are still, in part, stored away. Nicholas and Helena Rourke count among the messengers that have brought the teachings of truth to the world. They brought the teachings of truth to the world through Agni Yoga. Each brought forth the teaching into a form for today's humanity. It was especially the Rourkes who revealed their knowledge about the many veiled and unveiled sources of the teaching, called by some the Kala Chakra. In this teaching, in the Kala Chakra teaching, more is revealed about the name and location of Shambhala. The Mahatma letters, written at the end of the 19th century, brings to light information given by a most esteemed member of the community of the hierarchy, including the Master Morya. The Master Morya was the main teacher responsible for transmitting the teaching of Agni Yoga to the Rourkes. About Shambhala, Nicholas Rourke wrote, "At a certain spot, not to be mentioned to outsiders, there is a chasm spanned by a frail bridge of woven grasses with a raging torrent beneath. The bravest member of your alpine clubs would scarcely dare to venture the passage, for it hangs like a spider's web and seems to be rotten and impassable. Yet it is not, and he who dares the trial and succeeds, as he will if it is right that he should be permitted, comes into a gorge or surpassing beauty of the scenery, to one of our places, and to some of our people, of which and whom there are no geographers. At a stone's throw from the old lamastery stands the old tower, within whose bosom have gestated generations of bodhisattvas. George Rourke, the son of Nicholas and Helena Rourke, defines the term bodhisattvas as the kings of Shambhala in his book titled The Blue Annals, page 753, if you have the book. Nicholas Rourke, like the Mahatman Maurya, writes in Altai Himalaya of an area in Sikkim believed to be connected to Shambhala. He writes, "And above the bridge on the steep slope, you pause many times. Shall I arrive? One must hold one's breath to conquer this age-old mountain." He also writes of the ancient lamasery. He said it is called Valley Open to Heaven. He advises, try to search the endless wrinkles and cavities of its rocks. Try to unearth the treasures collected by the monastery, the miraculous stone, the fulfillment of all wishes, as well as all the sacred books are temporarily hidden, and all else spoken of the ancient manuscript, the voyage through Sikkim. And finally, the Rourkes and their disciples believe that there is a network of galleries, caverns, and catacombs used by the community of great sages. Nicholas Rourke writes, "In the foothills of the Himalayas are many caves, and it is said that from these caves, subterranean passages proceed far below Kanchenjunga. Some have even seen this stone door, which has never been opened, because the date has not yet arrived. The deep passages proceed to a splendid valley." So where some search for ancient manuscripts in museums, disciples know they are safely stored in the caves of the Himalayan mountains, and when the time is right, the door to these treasures will open. We know that all disciples are charged with the ability to bring three factors into their labor, which is light and love and harmony. This requires acting with cooperation. Another great disciple, Torquem Serdarian, says, disciples must participate, and this is a quote, disciples must participate in world affairs or in committees and in groups, organizing anything that benefits humanity. In his book, Spiritual Regeneration, there is a list of 6 goals of the disciple, goals which manifest the teaching in a most realistic manner. Goals that can be identified by the one who increases light, the one who increases divine love in the hearts of humanity, who releases divine will, who seals the door of evil to uplift humanity, who reveals the subjective synthesis of humanity, and who establishes a station of light which will illumine the whole realm of human thought. Those are the 6 points that identify a disciple and their service and their activity. So I'm going to elaborate a bit, not too much, but a little bit, on these 6 points. Increasing light. In the book Spiritual Regeneration, we are asked this: as a disciple, are you increasing light in all forms, in every department of human nature, bringing the truth into the departments, all departments of human nature? When a person lies to you What do you say? Do you bring enlightenment into his words? Do you expose his stupidity? This is so powerful. The words are simple. The action is so powerful. Do you expose his stupidity? Do you release him from his darkness by increasing the light? Do you bring greater information about the situation? If you are increasing the light, you are working with the plan. You do not have to be afraid because you have principle now and are working in the light. This is why we need disciples in politics today. Not followers of fear. Number 2, increasing divine love. Love is the fire of life in each person. Love is a universal law. It is an action that leads the person it touches to beauty. Love is the communion with the Almighty Presence in any living form. How are you releasing that fire of life in each human being? Love is pure understanding. Learn to see the causes of the actions behind the person. In seeing the cause, you will have pure understanding. In cultivating pure understanding, you will release the fire of love from within the heart of your friend, your family member, your coworker. Love is the inclusive awareness of the heart, where all that one has must be used for the welfare of all. It builds communication lines between you, the need, and the sources of abundance. As love increases, abundance flows in to meet one's need. 3, divine will. Divine will is the 5-pointed star of beauty, goodness, righteousness, joy, and freedom. To release divine will means to no longer be influenced or controlled by the lower wills of the personality life. 4, to seal the door of evil and uplift humanity means to start by taking an honest look at yourself. Is there darkness in you? If there is, then clean it. Clean everything you can that is bringing darkness. Separatism and hatred. Can you do that? If you cannot do it, then why are you on the path of discipleship? Subjective synthesis, this is number 5, means whatever you are doing or talking or writing about must emphasize oneness and synthesis and work to bring humanity together. Do not divide and conquer. Unify and bring victory. Buddha said, hatred cannot be washed away with hatred. Hatred can only be washed away with love. 25 years ago, Buddha was telling us that human destination is illumination. Whatever you think in your heart and mind, you must exactly do. And number 6, the disciple establishes a station of light. That is, the teaching establishes a place where the teachings will be taught and manifest. Disciples must focus their minds on creating a center of light. To create a university, a school, a study group. This is so important. Imagine what we could do if we had 75 trained disciples to work in the world, in politics. Disciples must think about how the light can be increased. If we do not increase the light, we will remain in darkness. So a disciple must start to see the purpose of their life. They must start to see the purpose of their life. Sometimes disciples sleep until they're in their mid-30s or 60s. And once they wake up, something wakes them up. And this week we're going to hopefully see a lot of disciples finally waking up to recognize what their purpose is, their life purpose is. They must think about how to materialize that purpose. And 3, to work for the actualization of the plan, which is their creativity. Those 3 points. A great labor for a disciple is to crack their ego and vanity, which are both very serious diseases. And this is the great test of discipleship. So how can we do this? The teaching says, say the following is a mantra daily. There's 3 lines. The first line is for us to say, what am I and what am I not? What am I and what am I not? The next line, who am I and who am I not? So what am I and what am I not, and who am I and who am I not? And the third line is, what do I know and what do I not know? In the time remaining, I want to share this. I wanted to share some parts of letters written by Helena Rourke to her students about disciples and discipleship. From Helena Rourke's Letters, Volume 1. She writes, now this is for us. It's still timeless. It is timeless. If you consider yourself to be a disciple. Therefore, she says, it is useful to write down from the books of the teaching all the necessary qualities, as well as all vices which are obstacles on the path. Verily, it is most difficult for people to realize that the foundation of discipleship and of all spiritual achievement is a striving toward the highest ideal and the fiery purification of all of one's feelings and one's whole character. And this is found on page 286, Letters 1. She says, whatever such a disciple is doing, his thought is always occupied by his ideal, the highest ideal. Everything is performed in the name of this ideal. And the disciple always feels in his heart the love and the presence of this image. The same is true regarding the prayer of a disciple. It is precisely this same unceasing striving of the heart and being in the presence of the chosen image. In connection with this, she says and writes, I remember a story about the great Confucius. She's still talking about the highest ideal. And the prayer of the disciple. She says of Confucius, once he was very ill, and his friends, thinking that he was about to die, prompted him to say his prayers. The sage smiled and said, "But my prayer started long ago." And indeed, was not all his life an unceasing service to the great ideal, which is the true prayer to the highest? After accepting a disciple, the teacher creates an unseen union with him and includes him in his consciousness. In other words, from that very moment, the teacher knows everything about the disciple. He can know every thought and feeling, even the most transient, and accordingly will guide his disciple. From the moment of his acceptance, the life of the disciple becomes entirely new. His dormant energies are awakened, and their development and transmutation are accelerated. A veritable battery of unseen but powerful rays are directed toward him. These rays become more and more perceptible in proportion to the striving and the growth of the disciple's consciousness and to the refinement of his organism. The object of this is to transform the inner self and to refine and separate the three bodies for independent work on the corresponding planes. Great is the tension of a disciple. The physical strength temporarily decreases, and he must follow a certain regime without abandoning his regular duties. Of course, all these rays can be assimilated only if the disciple is striving to the utmost. Everything requires a reciprocity, conformity, and accordance. Therefore, without expectation, there is no attainment. In the question of the acceptance of a disciple, his karma plays the main role. Precisely in connection with discipleship, it is most essential to realize the law of karma and to comprehend it in all respects. Thus, a person overburdened with karma cannot hope to become a close disciple. Only those whose earthly karma is almost completed can be accepted among the closest disciples. And here's the last one. The great masters who are constantly watching and directing the world process for the maintenance of its balance, and who lead in the gigantic cosmic battles, accept only those disciples about whom they have no further doubts. Those who have gone through and purified themselves through many fiery tests, and who in this life have again displayed their readiness, devotion, and self-denial, not in conditions of comfort, but on the edge of the abyss. Precisely those whose high spiritual centers are not only open, but are undergoing the fiery transmutation. And hence, says Helena Rourke, the small number of the closest disciples. So, this week, think of all things seen and unseen that are going to be taking place and transpiring. And spend time in contemplation and asking yourself, where is your part to play in this whole new renaissance? Pay attention to what's going on in the world. Those that are going to be giving messages out to all of us, crossing national lines and boundaries and cultures and races and politics, but those who are speaking in oneness. It's like on the way over here this morning, listening to Sirius XM, MSNBC was, their journalists, I'm trying to think where they were, where the first plane landed that's delivering the vaccine, the COVID vaccine. And with Pfizer, and some of the Pfizer employees, they were toggling back and forth to where the plane was landing. I don't know, South Carolina, I think, and wherever Pfizer is located. And the crying that was going on. They're so excited. They've been working and working and working 24 hours a day to get this vaccine ready. And now it was put in the trucks, and the trucks went to the airport, loaded on the planes took off. The first plane landed at midnight last night. It was supposed to land at 12:01, but landed a minute early. And the emotion, it's like they're not thinking of politics, they're thinking of saving lives. This is the oneness of life. It wasn't whose life was going to be saved, saving lives. So what perfect timing for this to happen. And it's not going to happen overnight. We know that we're going to be dealing with COVID at least through the summer. Maybe they're saying now they're hoping by the summer and certainly by the end of next year that things are going to be returning to normal. Bill Gates is saying it'll probably be 2 years before things will really be back to normal again. But he thinks the schools will be open by the fall, without fear. But it will take a while for the vaccines to be distributed and to stop, the death of so many people. So it's not going to happen overnight, but it is happening.